speaking of texturing, we're going to need to color our texture, our model. In order to do that, we can stay within our workflow here. And one thing I skip over is simplify. You can decimate this down in program if you want to. I generally tend to do that in ZBrush if I need to, but that's certainly there and available for you if you need to do that. 1.8 million polygons is fine with me. If you go over here to colorize, here you can do a drop-down quality. You can do preview or normal quality. And the difference between colorize and texture is colorize is going to be your vertex color. Just like polypaint and ZBrush, each vertice will have an RGB value, and you can basically polypaint or color your object based on its vert point or its point count. Of course, the quality of that color map is going to be dependent on how many points you have. For now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick with texture. So I'm just going to click Calculate Model Texture. And that's going to go ahead and give my model UV coordinates, basically unwrap my model, and then using my images, project that data onto my UVs and texture my model. Alrighty, here's our textured model. If we zoom around here, we can kind of zoom in a little bit. And man, that did a really bang up job. Really, really good stuff. A lot of detail in there. And just like we did in our other tutorial, we can actually export this geometry, resurface it, re-UV it, bring it back in, and then retexture it using reality capture and the point cloud data and the images. But before we do that, let's say we wanted to send a picture of this to somebody. So if you want to, you can go over here to Workflow, and you can hit Render, and that could you can render this out to an image. You can also go up here to the 3D Context Scene View and hit Mesh Render, and that'll render out an image of your model. And you can also go to Reconstruction Render. So any of these methods you want to do, let's go ahead and stick with Workflow, and we'll go to Render. And we can render an image out that we want to. We can go to Image Type. It can be colored. You can change that from colored to composite colored. You can do composite 4 views. It'll do 4 views of your object. You can do just shaded, shading type, resolution. We can up that if you want to, 4K, 8K, 16K. That's 720p is fine, etc., etc. Hit OK, and then tell it where you want it to save. We can just throw that on our desktop here. There's our PNG of our object, and you can send that to whoever you want. You're also going to notice there's a video option here, but the one I'm looking for here is mesh. We want to export this mesh into an external program for 2 reasons. Number 1, you can use it in an external program. Number 2, you can export it into an external program, like I said before, modify it, and then bring it back in and retexture it. But for now, we'll just go to mesh here. And I'm going to choose FBX. Of course, you can export this as any number of these things. We'll stick with FBX here. And we'll go ahead and save this as Girl Statue Final, FBX. Here's a bunch of FBX options that you can go through. The texture file format, I have changed to TIFF. You can change that to whatever you'd like. And of course, any of these other options, everything else looks good to me, so I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And one thing I think I mentioned it, but just in case I didn't, you're going to want to save often. So go up here and do, save or save as, and I'm just going to go ahead and save over this file I already have. Girl Statue RC is fine. And that way you can always hop back in and start where you left off. So we've exported that. Let's go ahead and head into ZBrush here. I'm going to grab my Z plugin, and we'll go over here to the FBX, import. And because we're doing FBX, we don't have to do the whole OBJ, import texture, flip U or V, I forget which. It'll go ahead and do all that for me. So now I have this object. I can go ahead and drag her out. Right now she's looking a little bit red. That's because we have her matte cap red wax. You can change that to a flat color if you just want to see the textures, or skin shader if you want to go in here and grab the skin shader 4. And now you can kind of go around your object and you can see what a great job it did. One thing we can check is, so this is an 8K capture. It looks a little bit low for 8K, so I'm going to go over here to the texture map here, and if we hover over that, you're going to see it's not really utilizing a whole lot of space there. So like I said before, one thing we can do is we can resurface this, re-UV it, get the detail back, and go back in and recapture all that texture information. And of course, if you want to clean any of this up, you can hold down Control Shift, and you can go through here, and we can do Control Shift Lasso, and you can go through here and kind of get rid of some of this stuff. And of course, you can go into Delete Hidden, Modify Geometry, Modify Topology, Delete Hidden, do any sort of cleanup work you want to. That'll be a separate video I'm going to do separate from this one. If you want to just see your model, go ahead and turn your texture off. And now this is going to be, it did export vertex color. So if we go through here and we turn the texture map on, you're seeing it get a little bit sharper, and then texture off. This is the poly paint here. So if we go over here to Subtool, you're going to see Colorize is on. So go ahead and turn that off. And now you just see your model. I'm going to change that to matte cap gray. And now you can see the actual geometry that reality capture created using your photographs.